This
Good
conference
afternoon to
will
each
now
one of
be
you.
recorded.
On behalf of the Bangalore Chamber of Industry and Commerce, we welcome each one of you to this session on key consideration during audit process due to COVID-19. In time like this, we need to stay connected and stay positive. This session has been organized under the aegis of Banking, Finance and Corporate Affairs Expert Committee of BCIC. We like to specially thank Mr. G. Ganesh Swaminathan, Chair, and Dr. K.V. Om Prakash, Co-Chair of the Banking, Finance and Corporate Affairs Expert Committee of the BCIC for curating this session for the benefit of our members at this crucial period. The speaker for today's session is Mr. D. Ramprasad, Practice Head, ASA and Associates, who brings with him 28 years of experience in both corporate and advisory roles in assurance, taxation, mergers, and acquisition, besides handling treasury functions. And for today's panelists are Mr. Ganesh Swaminathan, Chair, Banking, Finance and Corporate Affairs Expert Committee of BCIC, with over 25 years of experience as a partner in a leading consulting firm. The other panelist is Mr. Adarsh Dixit, CFO, the Mac Company. He is a financial leader with 18 years of experience in functional skills, business analytics, finance, accounting, and operations, controlling tax, taxation, operational risk management, information security risk, business continuity, and disaster recovery planning. The other panelist is Mr. K. S. Vinay, Executive Partner, ASA and Associates. He has over 12 years of experience in auditing and accounting consultancy services, and also specializes in corporate audit, service risk assessment, internal audit, system reviews, and JSOC. The session will be moderated by Dr. K.V. Om Prakash, Co-Chair, Banking, Finance and Corporate Affairs Expert Committee, BCIC, and Advocate and Founder Director, Consortia Consultancy. On behalf of the BCIC, we express our sincere thanks to D. Ramprasad, Adarsh Dixit, K.S. Vinay, and also Mr. Ganesh Swaminathan for accepting our invitation to address on this important subject. We also like to thank all the participants for joining for today's session on a weekend. We request all of you to kindly mute your mic and webcam options. This is to enhance and keep the bandwidth strong, as well as avoid any disturbance in the background. Please post your questions to the chat box only. Also be viewing the chat box for any specific instruction given by the organizer from time to time. The speaker and the panelists will respond to the questions during the session, and in case time do not permit, we shall be sharing the queries to the panelists and shall revert back to you accordingly. Kindly note the organizers will be disconnecting those participants who switch on their mic or webcam despite of our frequent request. May I now invite Dr. Om Prakash to set the context for today's subject and also moderate the session. Thanking you once again to all. Over to you, Dr. Om Prakash.
Thank you, Prithvi, for that wonderful welcoming address and also introducing all our speakers. We have a very strong panel today consisting of Mr. Ganesh Swaminathan, the chair of Bank Finance Committee, Mr. Ram Prasad, chartered accountant and practitioner from ASA and Associates. We have Vinay KS, Executive Partner ASA, and others from the industry perspective, who is a member of Institute of Chartered Accountant and is the CFO of the Mac Company. Welcome all, and we would next 1.5 hours we are going to talk about what is all about the audit process. There is a storm now just standing just before us, but we have not to anticipate what is it going to happen. Everybody is now busy with their sustainability. People are busy about the lockdowns, but nevertheless all the corporates have to analyze their financial accounts, have the audit process done, and then go forward for next financial year. So now this 1.5 hours what we are going to discuss is all about the various challenges, the consideration, the factors which were only in books of for academic interest, like going concern, force major conditions, all these were, in a examination point of view, will just leave it in choice. Now that has come to the limelight now, and all are talking about going concern concept, which was not at all an issue. Auditors never used to even question that. Now that is on top. So next 1.5 hours, our panelists are here, and Mr. Ram Prasad, the practice head of ASA, will set the context of the entire panel discussion, and we will be talking about the new normal is going to be the normal. So with this prelude, I would welcome Mr. Ram Prasad to present and set the context for the key consideration of audit process during this COVID-19. On to you, Ram Prasad, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Om. That was a very nice introduction by Prithvi, and I think you set the context very clearly. And I could see that what was remaining in academic area of discussion, or which was never a part of any audit going concern, where we assume that the company will be up and running for the foreseeable future, now has a different experience altogether. We are viewing it much more seriously. I will run through this presentation over the next 40 minutes, and then I will leave the panel to discuss and then share our insights. Yeah.
Would you be sharing, or Rupa, you are helping?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
So I think so. I'm just I've got this presentation in the four major areas. Although the institute has come with an FAQ, which is far more elaborate on impairment, borrowing costs, etc. I think the key would be going concern. The key would be inventories. The key would be subsequent events, and finally the auditor reporting. As Dr. Om Prakash rightly said, going concern was always.
Sorry to interrupt, Mr. Ram Prasad could increase the thing to the full view, full PowerPoint view. Thank you, sir.
Ram Prasad, you can make the slide show.
Yeah, I've done it. Yeah, I've done it. So
Yeah.
I think yeah, this is okay. I think the management probably has never would have never applied the judgment to this going concern in any context on a year-on-year basis. But this year, post February and March, I think things have turned completely topsy-turvy. And as Om rightly said, today sustainability and survival are assuming the key to the whole thing. Having said that, the presentation will be going in two strata. The first would be the management considerations, then the audit considerations, and then the reporting aspects. That's how I have structured the presentation for the three major topics that we are doing today. So what the management need to do in their assessment would be, as it is there in the slide, what is the impact of measures taken by government in all countries, like the lockdown measures, prohibition in the interest rate movement, how it is applying, how it is impacting the supply chain, then how the entities will meet their ratios, the RBI announcements on the moratorium, so on and so forth must be considered in their assessment. Finally, there is an economic impact which has probably again never come into our consideration, but probably now we are reeling under the economic impact, where recession is taking its toll across every single economy. And if you are seeing today's paper, I think only two economies are bound to have 1-2% growth, that is India and China, and the rest of the countries could probably be slipping into recession. So management should include all these in their assessment, and there are some key operating considerations that the management should continue to exercise in their assessment of going concern. Things like what are the contracts which I'm going to lose? What are the existing contracts which I lose? What is my pipeline, which normally we begin the year with a huge pipeline? Okay, this could be converted into an order. I think those pipelines could now merely remain a pipeline. They may be only pipe dreams now at this point in time. there is a huge, cutback. People are today talking of need to spend versus good to have. If there is a need to spend, I will spend the money. If it is good to have, I'm happy to postpone that spending to a third quarter or fourth quarter or maybe next year. So there is a complete analysis of every single expenditure head today by the CFOs. I'm sure others will watch more for that in this panel discussion. And things like what is my foreign exchange fluctuation? How are the customers looking at new supply chain because of this COVID? COVID has taught us that the world economy is that reliance on one single economy as a manufacturing base, one single country as a manufacturing base is definitely not a good idea, which is why you find the entire Southeast Asian economies have opened up in Vietnam, Indonesia, and including India has come with a new set of FTA rules, which are favorable to the MNCs to open the shop. The whole supply chain logistics is now going to undergo massive change. You can't have the entire manufacturing base in one country, and then if something of this pandemic which happens, which cuts the global supply chain, it could impact everything. So people are looking at that. So customers are trying to find out, are there any supplies which I can take from other places? Then because of this sudden shift in the supply chain, the raw material pricing, sourcing challenges have all erupted, and people are reacting on a need basis now. And there is also the associated cost with suspension and restart cost. I'm told that every factory which has been closed for 1.5 months, there is a huge startup cost which has not been factored by them. Automobile companies, tier 1 suppliers, tier 2 suppliers, etc. The machines have not run. So people are spending a lot of money to get the machines back to its Six Sigma working shape. So these are operating environment considerations which probably management were never factored in a normal course of its business, which need to be factored in today's new post-COVID world. The other matters which probably must be considered in management, and I draw attention to everybody, would be the forecasting cash flows for the next 12 to 15 months. Today, businesses are operating on a rolling cash flow model where every week, at least I know of service organizations, I know of manufacturing which are on a rolling cash flow to see where the cash inflows are coming. What are those priority expenditure which has to be met, and those things are going on a priority. And the assessment of the same should also be approved by the board, and the director's responsibility statement should in detail prepare how the management is responding to the challenge posed by the COVID and going concern. There are liquidity considerations for the management as well now. The risk relating to receivables, I'm sure everybody is struggling. What normally could be a 60-day credit is now extended to 90-day credit. There is a possibility that you'll have to give a steep discount, a steep cash discount to ensure that you get the money. And because the parent company is also in a location where economic recession has taken place, there's a risk that parent also will be no longer able to support the business. And because of this moratorium which has been given by RBI, there is a lot of confusion in banking circles whether this moratorium will attract additional interest cost. There is no clear-cut guidance. Each bank is going by the RBI circular according to its own interpretation. What has been postponed, I understand, is that the payment has been deferred, but that payment which has been deferred has to have an interest cost, so which is additional cost to the companies which are already reeling under severe liquidity constraint. So these also need to be factored by management when they are doing a proper going concern assessment. In effect, as Dr. Om Prakash rightly said, what remained in the textbooks now has to have a fresh look, where each and every account balance, where each and every component of receipt, each and every component of expenditure will probably be looked at more critically to ensure that we sort of are right in preparing the accounts on a going concern basis. As far as the auditors are concerned, they probably will have to spend some more time on understanding what is the preliminary assessment which is done by the management. They have to discuss with management what is the impact of COVID on their assessment, and they will definitely have to discuss what are the interruptions in the supply and production cycle, what is the interruption on the sales cycle, how are the materials going to be reached, where are the materials currently in the transit. All those questions will have to be really asked by the management, by the auditors to the management. And auditors have to definitely see whether there are any contradiction in the audit evidence which is provided. And the key would be, what is my potential issue related to debt, including debt governance, and the financial difficulties resulting in additional credit risk. To my, in my experience over the last 2 months where I've been involved in financing audits, the credit risk is assuming a huge discussion, is becoming a huge discussion point for the management. And there are parties which are considered good. Suddenly there is a huge looming credit risk whether the money will be realized or not. And all managements are definitely concerned as to how their credit rating will go for a swing because of this accepting the moratorium and all. Although RBI has very clearly told that these things will not impact the credit rating, still these are the questions which managements are debating, and auditors would be well advised to address these concerns. Analyzing and discussing the cash flow, profit, and other relevant forecasts with the management becomes key for the auditors, as much as it becomes key for the management to have a very detailed cash flow, month on month, the major sources of revenue, how they will complete the orders, how the orders will be dispatched, how the customers will accept, what is the ability of the customers to pay for those orders. All these things will be thoroughly discussed before a cash flow is prepared by the management, and auditors will have to discuss all those points to that nitty-gritty of micromanagement to ensure that they don't have any contrary audit evidence. The other things that auditors would be doing, which they would probably need to be doing, is reading the terms of debentures and any breaches, potential breaches in terms of those agreements, the meetings of the board and the shareholders and the relevant committees for reference to financing difficulties. And also the auditors would be doing their cost justice by discussing with the entity's legal counsel regarding the potential litigations, existence of litigations, and what are the new notices, new claims which have come, and what is the reasonableness of the management assessment of the outcome and the estimate of the financial implications. So it's a very long drawn exercise which has to be mutual, and management would be serving their cause well by making available appropriate board approved documents which are backed by as much third party evidence as they can to ensure that the accounts are indeed appropriate to be prepared on a going concern basis, and they will not have any adverse remark in the report. The other audit considerations could be claims, and as Om rightly said, Dr. Om Prakash rightly said, force majeure class, which normally was skipped in agreement today, assumes a major say, and we have to figure out whether this could particularly come under force majeure class. There are a number of legal opinions on the subject, and what are those claims which otherwise were sitting in contingent liability, which could now become crystallized liability, and how the management is assessing the probability of those liabilities becoming crystallized, and how they're making those estimations, and whether such estimations made by the management are in accordance with the stated standards on auditing should be ICAI. So these things assume important considerations for audit. The impact of consumer behavior would be very important discussion for auditors, because ultimately cash flows, ultimately your receivables, and your ability to collect the cash and ensure that you are sustaining for the next 12 to 15 months depends on how your consumer is going to behave. So things which probably we would have never done in a normal audit process need to be done. Today, as we read in the economic papers, the consumer is probably restricting himself only to essentials spending. There is no spend on luxury. There is no spend on non-essential items. There is absolutely no spend on luxury and discretionary spending. So consumers are also becoming very conscious of these facts because of threat of job losses. We keep reading. So it's a huge economic chain which is involved there, and auditors would serve their cost well by understanding how all these things would impact the going concern and ultimately the appropriateness of the same. The financial support, if at all given by the parent company, all those things must now be looked at afresh. With the earlier normal pre-COVID audit, the financial support letters would probably be accepted because they were coming from either US or any other parent is located in overseas country. But today, given the fact that the recession is there across every country and it is impacted every single economy, those financial support letters and the ability of various people to provide action funds need to be assessed more critically. The last should be the reviewing the reports of regulatory actions, how companies have complied with various guidelines which have been issued by the Ministry of Home Affairs. There are a set of guidelines which have been issued for opening the factories, how they are maintaining social distancing, are they running it the way it has to be run, would there be any penal consequences, and because of such penal consequences, would there be any financial liability, has to be seen. All those things would be additional audit considerations, and whatever the audit considerations that we've been discussing would also become relevant to the management to ensure that these points, they are in a position to completely satisfy the auditors, to ensure that the appropriateness of going concern assumption is there in the preparation and presentation of accounts to the stakeholders. Moving on to another very important and very interesting topic, which is assuming great importance, is inventories. As we are all aware, the lockdown could not have been more inappropriate time for auditors and management. It was exactly timed the last 1 week of March, the last week of March. Typically, auditors would be doing the stock take on March 30 to April 1 or April 2. This whole cycle will be complete. Unfortunately, this financial year ended 31/3/2020. None of this could be completed by the management, and auditors could not observe in such this thing. So there is a new norm which has happened for inventory verification. We shall discuss what it is. So facilitate stock counts at all points. What are the responsibilities? Using technology effectively, and there must be unique reference number if technology is being leveraged, and management has to ensure that there are effective internal controls throughout, and there has to be proper documentation to substantiate the inventories which are considered in stock and which have been considered as sold. And management should ensure that the provision for obsolescence is done as done in every normal year. So these are probably the pith and substance of the management responsibilities, and we will try to see what are those audit considerations and the scenarios. The scenarios are management unable to conduct physical verification on the data financial statements. I'm sure by now all the management should have informed the auditors that they could not conduct the verification because of lockdown, because of lack of movements, interstate movements, movements within the districts in every state where the warehouses could be. All those things are clear possibilities. So they should have informed by now their inability to conduct. And physical verification need to be conducted by management at a date other than the date of the financial statements. The auditors typically do this rollback or roll forward procedure as the case may be. And the institute advisory is very clear. It very clearly says that auditors cannot take a blanket approach, and there could be some industries which have not been adversely affected. There are some essential industries like fertilizers which have not been affected, where you can still go ahead and do it because you are coming into essential commodity. Movement of transportation and of people was very much available. You could still go ahead and do a physical verification. So any approach to be taken by the auditors would entirely depend on the quality of the entity's inventory records and the entity's inventory procedures, whether it's perpetual, the robustness and the control surrounding the same. And the auditors would be serving the cause well by exercising due professional skepticism. The IFC, probably the RCMs, the risk control metrics prepared by the companies, and the testing procedures would not probably would have factored this. But if the management has quickly ramped up their RCMs and done some additional test procedures, that also need to be considered appropriate. If alternate audit procedures were impractical to attend, the auditor shall perform alternate procedures to obtain a substantive audit, appropriate audit evidence regarding existence and condition of the inventory. So that's important. The auditors would probably do well to see supporting documents for purchases and subsequent sale of specific inventory. And certain audits that we did, we also ensured that the customers had indeed received the goods because they were permitted. So we need to do specific checks with regard to this materials, whether physically they have arrived at your premises, whether in case of sales, whether the materials have been physically accepted by the customer. There are certain options available to auditors, which inter alia includes using the work of the internal auditor and using the work of another independent chartered accountant. Both of them are very much possible. There are challenges though. Companies may find it very difficult to motivate independent chartered accountants other than statutory auditors to do verification because of COVID conditions, when all managements are trying to protect the welfare of the employees. It is possible that engaging an independent auditor, internal audit, could become a difficulty. But nevertheless, such an option is available for the auditor. In respect of internal auditor, as per the standard, we have to evaluate the competence, independence, and objectivity, and also look at the adequacy of the inventory verification process and the instructions which have been issued to the internal auditor on the samples, etc., and inform the internal auditor of deliverables, accounting reports, what are the memoranda of observations and conclusions, so that those can be appropriately factored by the statutory auditor when he's finalizing accounts. The other same thing when you engage another independent chartered accountant, including issuing the instructions as above, and communicate planned use of CS with those charged with governance, and take the board into confidence that because of logistics reason, it is possible somebody may be sitting in Karnataka, there could be a large warehouse in Tamil Nadu. We may not be in a position to travel because of lockdown restrictions and because of unwillingness of people to travel. You can use the services of a chartered accountant who is based in the state of Tamil Nadu and use his work and appropriately document and ensure that you take a relative comfort on inventories account balance. Use of video conferencing technology is also very much a possibility, and the audit approaches include observing inventory counting remotely by video call and ensuring security of these applications, including the recording of the same, and ensuring that they are stored in the database, so that at any point in time, should there be any inspection or any FRRB inspection, we can always show it to the concerned inspectors that we have indeed applied our professional skepticism and judgment and due care in ensuring that inventories were appropriately verified and valued correctly. In respect of third party, management would serve the cause well by ensuring that confirmation from third parties are received and undertook auditors, preferably direct confirmation, and such a confirmation should be evaluated carefully. And one has to also check what is the responsibility of the third party with respect to the condition of the inventory. It is possible if the inventory is in a warehouse which has to be fumigated regularly, as has been done, one would also apply skepticism to see what is the condition of inventory lying in those third-party warehouses and whether any obsolescence provision or any write-down must be taken. The last would be the inventory in transit, and suitable evidence regarding the location condition of the inventory should be obtained by the auditors and shall be made available by the management. The institute is fairly clear that auditor cannot be absorbed from the responsibility just because the auditor opts for alternate procedures. The auditor's responsibility continues to be the same. Implications of the inability to attend the physical verification depends on the quality and reliability of the audit evidence which is obtained. If the audit evidence which we have obtained is satisfactory, if it is of the same quality that one would have obtained had the physical verification been done by management and the auditors have participated in it, then it can be an unqualified opinion. There is no need to modify the report. In case the quality of the audit evidence and the reliability thereof is not up to the standards set by the auditor for his work, and which does not pass independent scrutiny of any third party professional, then probably there would be modification in the audit opinion. The next point, the third point that we are now moving on would be subsequent events. As in the prelude that was set for this session, we did see that as the accounts are going to be finalized over the next 2 to 3 months for unlisted companies or private companies, there could be huge challenges which could be faced by the management on subsequent events. Typically, subsequent events are those events which occur between the date of the closure of the accounts till the date of the audit report. And events could be adjusting events, events could be non-adjusting events. So there could be huge debate on that, whether it's adjusting event or non-adjusting event as per Ind AS 10. And also, one has to also see what sort of recognition measurement uncertainties may have been created to disclose. So those are the major challenges. As in the normal year, when there was no COVID, assuming there was no COVID, subsequent events would not take much time for an auditor. He knows the company is functioning, he knows it is a going concern, he knows sales are taking place. But in the revised post-COVID in the situation, when economies are battered, when the customer choices, preferences are undergoing a tectonic shift, subsequent events, their assessment becomes a significant point for the management. Management has to go that extra mile to prepare and factor these in their cash flow considerations, and to see how these impact their rolling cash flow plans, which could be weekly or fortnightly or monthly, depending on the intensity and the cash flow position of every organization. Management response would entirely include assessing the impact on each component of the financial statements, considering the COVID break, which is continuing to evolve, and identify and categorize the subsequent events into adjusting or non-adjusting events. Make necessary adjustments. Examples could be provision for obsolescence, provision for bad debts, additional claims, force majeure class claims. All these things that were really analyzed threadbare by the management before they ensure that the subsequent events they are properly responded and make available the necessary audit evidence to the auditors. They must also disclose significant recognition measurement uncertainties in measuring various assets and liabilities, and document clearly how such assessment they are carried out. Such assessment should entirely include, as far as possible, third-party evidences, because third-party evidences could bring better clarity to auditors and ensure that there is no management bias. The auditor's responsibilities and considerations would include things like perform the audit procedures, which hitherto would have been a tick-the-box approach, would now require serious work by the auditors. They have to go through every single revenue item, they have to go through every single expenditure item and see whether there is anything which need to be done to adjust the accounts as of March 2020. They have to do inquiries with the management, and they must read minutes of the meetings. It is also imperative that they read monthly MIS meetings between March to say June or July, whenever they are going to finalize, and also inquire about matters for which minutes are not available, and also take into cognizance and account the entity's latest interim financial statement. Could be monthly MIS, it could be draft report, unaudited, etc. Whatever be it, the reading and analyzing the numbers thereof would enable the auditor to understand his concerns on subsequent events and their impact on the financials for 31/3/2020. The events and conditions that may be relevant in the current environment include new commitments and borrowings and guarantees. One of the important things, if you have noticed, when the Honorable Finance Minister was announcing the stimulus package of 3 lakh crores, there is still a hesitancy, although the Honorable Minister has clearly said that these lines of credit would have government guarantee and banks are free to lend. There is, what I understand when I discuss with various industry groups, various industry people and managing directors, CFOs, etc., they're pretty hesitant to borrow money because they're not sure of the ability to repay. They're adopting a wait and watch policy. So things like new commitments, borrowings, etc., invocation of force majeure, expected credit loss provisioning, because customers who might have gone into liquidation, and what are the developments and contingencies in case you are laying off employees. Are you paying any ex gratia? Are you paying any additional sums, extra 1 or 2 months salary, whatever is you're paying? All those things must be considered and categorized into adjusting event or non-adjusting event based on the evidence which is available. And it could also, auditors also need to study the indications of impairment in the value of investment companies severely affected by the pandemic. Sectors which are obviously affected include aviation, include hotels and restaurants, and things like that might have to be really studied with the auditors. The audit approach includes a deep exercise of professional skepticism, significant management judgment, and questioning them, and applying significant audited judgment, and questioning the sufficiency and appropriate audit evidence regarding subsequent events is very important for auditors to ensure that they have fulfilled their obligations with respect to ensuring that subsequent events have been appropriately factored in the financial statements. Specific written representations from management, detailed notes in the financial statements, all need to be prepared. If the auditor determines that the financials are materially misstated and the subsequent events have not been properly factored in the financial statements, then a qualification may be necessary. If the auditor is able to obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence, he may or may not treat it as a key audit matter. He may or may not give an emphasis on matter. But I have seen in practice companies beginning to give emphasis on matter where they would like to specifically draw the attention of the reader to the particular para on subsequent events and allowing the reader to form his own judgment. The management considerations would include, as far as the subsequent events reporting, making a detailed assessment of components, disclosures in the financial statements, future operating results, and the board needs to be well documented and should be approved by the board. The auditor's responsibility finally in the audit report would depend on only 2 things. If he has been able to obtain sufficient and appropriate audit evidence which is backed by complete cooperation and the details given by management, an unqualified report is very much in order. Probably inclusion of a material uncertainty related to going concern by way of emphasis of matter para would be in order. And if he has not been able to obtain such comfort, such audit evidences as he deems necessary, and if it is not sufficient appropriate, then probably auditor would be considering issuing the modified audit opinion. So as Dr. Om Prakash rightly said, this year I would expect keen debates between the management auditor on the reporting part and how they will look at it needs to be seen as things evolve. So I think these are probably the important points and consideration. In case it is a key audit matter, the auditor should bring out the language clearly, and also what procedures he has performed to ensure that there is a comfort that is obtained. The auditor also should read other information in the financial report, in the annual report, and check for inconsistencies, and a special attention with respect to matters impacting COVID, and he must ensure that there is a consistency and linkage between what has been disclosed by the directors in the board report to what is stated in the financial statement. As far as Coro is concerned, the auditor definitely would be reporting certain classes on physical verification, on deposits, and the institute recommends that in case the company has opted for moratorium, such factual statement should be mentioned. It does not constitute an adverse remark. It is a mere statement of fact. And with respect to the internal financial reporting, definitely COVID-19 would not have been factored when the auditors, when the management were testing their IFCs. So those changes might have been made. I understand many companies never planned for such a massive work from home, where data was freely getting shared on the net. So those things would need to be factored when somebody is looking at an ITGC, when probably somebody is looking at information technology general controls. Those probably would need to be taken into consideration. The design effectiveness need to be robustly tested. So is the results, the outcome of the operating effectiveness of the same. And ultimately, what sort of communication is resting between the management and the board and with those charged with governance. The auditor should always remain alert for possibility of lapse of controls and fraud, and definitely do a discussion with the CIO as to how the information system infrastructure behaved during this period of COVID, to ensure that there has been no hacking, and there has been no data breach, and there has been no incidents which could have an impact on the financial statement. So I think this probably would be the key things that we have discussed, and I now would leave the floor to the panel to be chaired by Mr. Ganesh Swaminathan, a professional of great standing, and I leave the floor to you, Ganesh.
Thanks, Ram Prasad, and I would like Om Prakash to take it up for the moderation. I think whatever points you have covered for the COVID-19 impact or relating to the auditors and approach towards it is fairly stated, and I think management, it is now the management's role, how it has to be how it has to be explained and provide those sufficiency for the auditors. But at the same time, auditors has to be very practical in seeing those evidences, considering the closeouts and the considering the restrictions to the management which has been laid by the governmental restrictions or by the access to the factories and locations. This has to be evaluated in a proper manner. Giving this intro, I think I would ask Om Prakash to take it forward. Om, are you there? Okay, let me start with the question to Adarsh. Adarsh, I would like to understand, in case of management side, what kind of difficulties or what kind of expectations you are laying down to the processes, business processes, and also for the accounting disciplinary disciplines which you want to emphasize for the closure of this year's accounts.
Thanks for the question. My response probably will be slightly divergent to the question that you asked, but in my view, it will all come back to this main point. See, the biggest challenge that we are facing today is ability to predict sustenance. I mean, obviously, growth is far-fetched dream in these days. But even sustaining for a quarter or a half year or a year is the biggest challenge. So that brings us back to the going concern concept. The biggest, that's where I guess we will struggle, to be honest with you, because of the complexity of the business that we are in, the intricate nature of the business. It's very hard, even for people who are at the front, like for instance, people who are sitting with the customer on a day-to-day basis, even they will find it very difficult to predict whether a particular business is going to survive, whether even if it is going to survive, will it survive for 6 months or 12 months? So to be very frank, it's a great challenge. There is no single solution. There is no single narrative that we can bring across and say if these set of conditions does exist in a particular business, you can take it with some amount of certainty to say that okay, you're going to continue your contracts or etc. with that business. So when you have so much of uncertainty around, um, coming back to your question, frankly, accounting, doesn't take importance in our mind today. I mean, it's important, of course, from a discipline standpoint of view. I guess the focus today is all about sustaining the business. Can we sustain the business for 1 quarter, 2 quarter, 3 quarter, and sail through this, this torrid conditions for another 12 months with the hope that eventually there will be a vaccine, whether it's 12 months from now, 18 months now, and then obviously step up your pedal. So, to be honest with you, accounting doesn't really matter much in our mind today. It's all about business survival.
Noted.
Adarsh, having said that, would you see the management considering the extension of financial year or extension for conducting the AGM? These are the normal routes which normally has been a practice. Do you see a challenge there? How does it,
See, it depends upon what stage of maturity that you are. So, supposedly, if you are a listed company or a company where your financials becomes very important for you to continue with your credit lines, whether it's working capital credit or let's say you're servicing a debt, quite naturally, you will have pressure from your stakeholders to make sure that your books are closed on time. So, obviously, while the management wants to, hopefully extend the financial year just so that they have more certainty around how the numbers would look like, etc. To be honest with you, the pressures from external stakeholders will continue to build. Just as much as we want some amount of certainty, even the external stakeholders, basically the bankers, lenders, etc., they want to have a point of view in terms of is it worthy of being engaged with that business or is there an opportunity in that business. So to be honest with you, there will be pressure to close books on time, to audit our financial statements on time. I would probably second guess if management will have an opportunity to extend the financial year.
Oh, you see that. Okay. Before
Yeah.
going to the other panelist, I would like to have a question with you. What steps should management take to ensure that the accounts reflect true and fair view of the state of affairs? You have been a champion and as a CFO avatar for various large companies. How do you see that? Ultimately, you need to get a true and fair view of the state of affairs. What are all of the steps which management would like to take in this scenario?
Om, was that a question to me or to other panelists?
Yeah, it's your question to you only.
Okay. So in terms of true and fair view, I mean, so I represent services industry. Obviously, we will not have the complexity of a manufacturing or complexity of a retail industry. So my response to that extent will be limited. The area where I would look at to say that whether we have a true and fair view would be in terms of our ability to perform our contracts. The industry that I come, this is a little more nuanced view of what I'm saying. The industry I come from is all about going to a customer, articulating a problem to the customer and saying that, hey, you seem to have this problem and you don't have a very effective way of solving this problem. We come with our own set of tools and we're going to solve the problem for you. And then obviously that's the expectation that you set with your customers. Now, once you have signed up with the customer and you have set high expectations, you have to deliver the contract. So the biggest thing that will have impact on my financials in terms of will I give a true and fair view of my business is to see whether we will be able to meet our performance obligations. And especially if the contracts are complex, it becomes that much more difficult to say, while there is an order book, there is a work that has happened. Obviously, by the definition of contract, you have logged in hours or time, whatever the case might be, and you seem to have the revenue. So you're in a rush to reflect the revenue financials, but we don't know. We really don't know whether indeed we have delivered the work that we have to deliver, especially in these conditions, right? I mean, people are not around. Nobody's putting their head around and say, have we done? We have not done. So I guess the biggest challenge today that we have is to reflect the true and fair view of revenue. I don't know. I mean, putting a number out there on my financials, I don't know if that revenue indeed is a true revenue or is a number that business believes they've delivered. So I guess I would say that would be my focus area on the true and fair view. Expenses, of course, they are very much within your control, so you don't really struggle there. I think it's largely about your revenue. How do you know that the revenue that you reflect is a very qualitative revenue?
Thank you, others. Thank you. And Mr. Vinay, a small question for you. How should management look at the audit process this year, and how is it going to be different from the normal ones? Do you see a change? Do you see any steps?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Om Prakash. This year's audit would definitely be different from earlier years in the sense, definitely because both the auditee and the auditor, both of them, I think at least till now, have been working from their respective homes. Nobody has been at their workplace. That is one. So the challenge would be that coordination with the internal teams definitely would be there for the industry, because depending on the locations that their respective team members are, and while there's going to be some kind of a time saving because travel to the client locations would not be there, but definitely there could be some delays in getting the information from the auditee in terms of let's say documents or let's say something which is not readily available, unlike earlier years where you directly sit face to face with the client, get the information or clarifications. Here a bit of coordination is required from the client side, so that could maybe delayed. I don't say significantly, but there could be, I mean, this is obviously the new normal, so we have to get used to this. So this could take some time. And similarly, obtaining confirmations could also be a challenge, because across the globe, most of them are kind of working from home and so on. So especially overseas vendors or customers where they themselves are going through this pandemic, I see some kind of a challenge there, getting the confirmations. The last one for this particular year would be the IFC testing, especially because as Mr. Ramprasad rightly mentioned on the year-end controls especially, and also in the last fortnight of March, I think most of them have been working from home, and there have been some modifications to the controls and the processes, and due to which there could be a change. There is a possibility of exposure in terms of risk, and the management basically needs to document these changes in the process and the controls, and also ensure that these controls are tested and they are operating effectively even in terms of in these times. And I think these are the main changes that I see, and definitely this is different from what it used to be normally, but as we say, this is going to be the new normal. So I think we start getting used to this kind of audits.
Oh, thanks, Vinay. That means the pitch is going to be rough. It's not going to be as a very good wicket for batting.
Yeah, I think I would definitely ask our very senior professional, Mr. Ganesh, to add on to this.
Mr. Ganesh, what do you think the management's responsibility, and how should the auditor deal with such complexity, which is in the changing environment and situation of COVID as a going concern? What are the assumptions they have to make, and how do we progress?
Thanks, Om. I think I would like to pitch in for the thing. I think the new norm is going to be the digital platform. Previous audit through the digital platform, and also believe that the audit evidence are through the digital form. Earlier, the traditional auditors used to go to all clients' place, see for vouchers and original documents. Today, they have to convince themselves that all the originals or scanned copies which is being sent are the right way of evidence, so that they can believe that the audit can be continued for closure. The sufficiency and adequacy has to be belief, and it is mostly going to work on trust and faith of the client. If you believe the client has given you the right documents and the contracts, I think you should be believing it for some period of time until we come to the normalcy. In regard to the going concern, what happens is, as you all know, the cash flow, whatever was a good company which was having its cash flow based on the rolling over weeks, I think, which was mentioned by Ram Prasad. Today, those companies have already come into the tighter fund position. So they don't know what is going to happen. And also, the drawal power is also been increased by the banks, but the companies are not opting for it, because they themselves don't know whether they will be able to deliver what is there. It's especially on the manufacturing side, because the supply chain and also the delivery of logistics have become so unpredictable because of all the restrictions through the interstates and states. I think it is becoming so difficult for the companies to deliver what has been expected. For example, I can give what has been in the public news. Maruti has got an order of 100,000 cars, but their capacity is to produce 60,000 cars, which is now because the supply chain is totally now tied up. So in this scenario, I'm looking at small scale industries and medium sized industries, which is going to have a tough time. And because of that, the cash turns or the fund position cycles, trade cycles are going to be shrinking, or it is going to expand. I'll say not shrinking, it is going to expand. They're going to have a tough time with going concern to explain to the auditors or to the third parties. Banks themselves will question them. Why do you require funds? Or they might reduce their credit lines over a period of time because they have not performed for last two quarters. March has been affected, and this June still 2 months, no production, minimum production. I think by June, when the first quarter results are given, their credit lines will be reduced to lower than what has been there in the last year, which can affect their going concern.
Okay, thanks, Ganesh. There is a question from one of the attendees, Shashidhar Egde. How companies are planning to do physical verification of assets, especially IT and ITES companies, where large amount of IT assets are held by employees and they are working from home. So this is basically for the verification of assets, physical and planning. So can the panelists answer one of this question?
I can take it up. See, in case of IT and IT assets, there is a process which has been laid by most of the companies. If it's an STP and SEZ assets, they are all registered in a registered documents are there with the asset numbers and what do you call license numbers, everything. As far as IT assets are concerned, it's easy because they can run through a application or a software is there to test each of these unique asset numbers or the laptop or whatever asset they are having, which can be tested, and also license can be tested through those license softwares. The only question which will come, and also they should take the individual confirmation of asset from each of the individuals through emails or by telephonic calls. You can do random telephone calls to understand whether this is the serial number which the employee is holding. So those kinds of tests which can be done. And today's Zoom calls are there, so you can, if you put the Zoom call, you'll be able to get the person and also his ID, which it's, if it's an employee email, you'll be able to access it, correct? So we can test verify it.
Thank you, Ganesh. And Ram Prasad, Mr. Ram Prasad, you have been a very good hard negotiator, or in respect of management and talking to the board of directors. So, what is the responsibility of the board of directors, those charged with governance in these challenging times? So how do they pursue all the governance? There is going to be lapses here and there.
Yeah, Om, I think that was a very good question. The greatest challenge actually is coming for the board. At the end of the day, they still need to give the responsibility statement. And I do find boards actually grappling and struggling with this going concern. And as Adarsh rightly mentioned, the view of the management is different from those charged with governance. The view of the management, as others rightly mentioned, is about sustenance, survival, and ensure that I am afloat for the next 6 months. And definitely, I think he brought out a very good point about the quality of the earnings, which are going to be there in the next few months. The quality of the earnings, the appropriateness of whether such earnings are can be recorded in the books itself. So that would be completely different from a board's expectation, where those charged with governance and board certainly are not prepared for the new normal. So there has to be via media, there has to be complete synchronization between their goals, and a lot of documents the frontline management has to share with the board, convince them that they are taking the necessary steps, and board has additional now to probably apply greater scrutiny and greater judgment than what they have done in the past. Not that they have not been doing it in the past, but probably with more rigor and more handholding they need to the management to ensure that they sail through this crisis. Yeah.
Thanks, Ram Prasad. And Mr. Vinay, there's a quick question for you. How should companies assess COVID-19 events after a reporting period? What is the level of documentation that is expected?
Yeah. So this assessment is going to be continuous and could also change depending on the circumstances and the industry and economic factors for sure. And one thing that the company needs to do is all such matters which could impact the entity needs to be kept track of and well documented. The documentation that they should maintain should also be acknowledged by the board and those charged with governance. That is a must. And if there are certain assumptions and judgments that the management had earlier made and which would need to be relooked due to the changing environment, that needs to be appropriately dealt with. That is one. And it could also be the cash flow projections, the going concern assumption, and it could also be relating to the evaluation of inventories as well. So any of these could change, the scenarios could change. And there could even be an additional liability that may have to be provided for if those conditions exist at the balance sheet date. So wherever there are adjustments that are necessary, that needs to be made in the financials, that needs to be taken care. And if it is a non-adjusting event, obviously proper, clear, adequate disclosures needs to be given in the notes, explaining clearly the business scenario and the management's assessment on various aspects of the company's business, and also highlight all the uncertainties that the management is facing for the near foreseeable future.
Thanks, Vinay. And how do you see the management or auditor assess the NRV, that is the net realization value, in these challenging times? How do you assess that? The question for you, Vinay.
Yeah. So obviously there are few industries, or let's say few products, where definitely there's a shelf life or there's obsolescence that can set in, for which we need to look at the valuation. It could be a food industry or anything of that sort. So basically, as part of the subsequent events review, we also need to look at the change in the market price, and the latest price obviously has to be considered. And if there is a significant dip, and if there's a market demand has actually plunged, for example, the oil sector, we can take that could be the right example. Whatever was the purchase that they would have made during the last quarter, or let's say the last month of this year, financial year, that surely wouldn't be the actual realizable value as on day if you're going to finalize an account, or let's say if you want to sign off. So definitely the latest market price has to be considered, and then accordingly the realizable value needs to be accounted for. The value obviously has to be, there has to be a write-off. Write-off has to be given to accounts.
Mr. Ramprasad, issues relating to the inventories you did mention, but what are the intricacies? How the companies look at it? What are all the precautions they have to take?
I think one couple of points companies should do is there cannot be an adjustments to their. Just I'm talking of valuation aspect. Managements cannot make any adjustments to production capacities. There is no new normal because of COVID. The entire idle capacity must be expensed off. That is one precaution they must take. The other precaution would be, as Vinay rightly mentioned, would be late expiry stocks and the need for obsolescence. So auditors would have to scrutinize the numbers when it was produced, and if it is not getting sold, then the NRV must be tested, and those precautions we have to take. Then physical security aspects definitely must be taken in these times. These would be the things which I think I would urge management to exercise caution. Yeah, and of course extensive use of technology, and to ensure that both the physical aspect and the environmental aspect of such inventory will be taken care of.
There's one question from one of the participants. Lalita has a question. Is there a standardized class, or what should the management or the board of directors in their directors report mention about the COVID-19? Normally, I think this is getting disclosed in the board of directors report.
This is Ganesh. I think I would like, since we are auditors, but I can explain as a management. I think it is the precautions and the actions which has been taken by the management has to be disclosed, and what is the steps they have taken to ensure their reporting. I think there is a standard which says that they complied with the law and they complied with the accounting standards and the process in preparation of these accounts. I think they should give their best of estimates and judgments which has been used for preparation of these accounts, and what is actually has happened in the real facts which has happened during the preparation of the accounts. I think that disclosure will help the stakeholders. At the same time, the auditors also, which will match with the auditors reporting which is there. In case there is going to be future issues, I'm saying, like if there is going to be an obsolescence or impairment which has been predicted, or there is going to be a pipeline of sales pipeline which has come down, I think they should be factual in saying what is there, either in the MD&A report or in their director's report, which will be the considered by the stakeholders and also for the auditors to ensure that true and fair reporting has been done, which will help the bankers and I think the other stakeholders, vendors, bank, whoever is the third party reviewing their accounts.
So a lot of companies have been, this is a question raised by Mr. Raghavan. There are a lot of companies will be looking for raising funds during COVID-19. They normally prepare projections and give it to various banks or the investors. Will the auditor insist on seeing all those things?
Yeah, probably we will have to see, because as a going concern, you are required to see the next 12 months cash flow statements, how the company is performing. So for this fact preparation, they should be sharing us what is required. At the same time, the past history, if it is good, I'm saying, like if the last 5 years has been good and this is a glitch which has happened due to COVID because of 6 months underperformance, then that will be taken account by, which can be easily identified, I'm saying. So as auditors, we look at the information which is available as facts. As far as the bank is concerned, they will look at what is the status, because they have the history of happening. So they'll be able to judge this, whether these cash flows are matching to their existing past performance and also the existing situation.
There's another very sensitive question to the panelist. Presently, the entire audit is done through online. I think the auditors should ensure the data is secure. Your views?
No, I think that's what I was saying. It is all today through digital platform. I think, and if you are believing in cloud for storage of your data, and if you are looking at privacy, and there are ways and means in which the data is stored, and it is finally after the audit is over, it is getting deleted or purged, and it can be maintained by the client or it can be maintained by the auditors, depending upon how you want to do the cloud delivery of that data room, which has
Uh,
already been done. Om Prakash, I think a lot of audits are already been delivered in that form.
so there is no major task or fear in that.
Correct, because if you are allowing your data to be stored on cloud, it's the same principles the auditors will apply. The only thing auditor will also look at is the original supportings at some point of time. Suppose we say a few new contracts have come in, they would like to see the original contract. So there will be a field visit which will be happening to see the original documents and place, whichever place, whether it is in a remote place, then it is a question. But if it's in corporate office, they will see all those documents. See, for example, I will raise a question in regard to minutes of the board meeting. How transparent will be the corporate to share it on the data room? Will they ask the auditors to come and check it in person, or will they share it, put it in the loose file and say scan it and put it in the data room? It's a question, correct? If it's a small private limited company, they don't bother, they will put it. But if it's a big private unlisted company which is having complex structuring and all the information being stored, would you like to put it on the data room is a key. So there will be a mixed way of doing the audit. You have to go for the field for you seeing some corporate information which is very private and confidential for the purpose which can't be stored in the data rooms.
Others, this is a question for you. Coming to the non-performance of agreements, force major conditions getting involved, uh, how would the contingent liability be treated? You know, any from the industry perspective, can you throw light on that?
Certainly I would have been happy to give a point of view, an informed point of view. We had an anecdotal. Unfortunately, this event itself is, such a rare event and a black swan event, if you may call. So I may not have an anecdotal to call it out, but probably commonsensically, I can call it out, or rather, let's say commonsensically, I can lay it out. One approach is, this needs a deep understanding of the business and the problems that we're solving for the customers. The best place to start your analysis to say, do we need to make a provision or let's in our financials is to look at all those accounts and customers where we have had customer escalations. In a sense, like where the customer has kind of called out that the performance is not up to the mark, or let's say we have missed our deadlines or milestones, whatever you may call it as. I think that's the best place to start because that's a fertile ground for you to know. So if you start there, you will get a fair sense of, very, as I said, you need a very deep business knowledge for it. But let's say you take support from your colleagues, etc. You'll get a fair sense of, okay, this is a place where there's a good chance that, you'll not be able to perform your contract. You obviously need to go through the fine thread of the contract to understand what we have agreed with the customers. Are we going to have any performance warranties, or do we need to make a provision? So this is the a commonsensical approach that I can think of right away as we speak. Have I gone through a similar precedence in the past? No, but you can draw from experience that usually we do for warranties. In any case, we make provision for warranties, right? So from that, probably we will be able to draw some experience and arrive at something that we might consider reasonable.
Going by your experience, this is unprecedented and things will evolve. And I think both the management and auditors have to really have a consensus in disclosing the contingent liability. What is your take? Yeah. What is your take? Ganesh, Adarsh was telling, yes, definitely this is unprecedented.
Yeah, Om, I just want to add one thing. Probably it's a great opportunity
Sure.
for auditor, for auditor
Go ahead.
and the business for come together. See, as I said in the at the very beginning of my conversation, the next 6 months and 12 months and 18 months, I guess the business is all about inward focus for survival. So as much as an auditor wants to come with his technical hammer to say this is going to work, this is not going to work, I can assure you that business is not going to heed to any of those because it's a question of survival. So, but probably this is a great opportunity for the audit community as well to really start looking from a business perspective to say, okay, while technicalities are important, that responsibility on the auditor cannot be taken away, and that's the reason why people depend on their attestation. But it's also very important for the audit community to think beyond technicality and see, is there a room, or let's say, is there a commonsensical agreement to what the business is saying? Because if you go by accounting standards or technical accounting was never built for a condition like this. No technical accounting literature perhaps would have built for something of this magnitude and order. So now I guess it's more about audit community, of course, taking refuge of technical accounting, but also taking refuge of common sense and business sense in forming an opinion that is not always driven by technical accounting as much as judgment. There should be some judgment that should go in when we attest the financials now.
Mr. Ganesh, do you see any probability of large amendments or relaxation in the accounting standards if this is going to be, stay on for say another 1 or 2 years?
No, I don't think there's going to be change in accounting standards. I think there'll be some limited guidelines which will be given how to evaluate and be practical to the process. I think that will be there. I would like to add on this contingent liability. See, there could be a lot of time these claims might come in because of this COVID condition, non-performance of the what you call delivery and other thing. So there could be possible claims which can come in. I think as a management and also by the auditors, we should see whether it has been acknowledged as debt or whether it's going to be litigated, whether there is going to be a possible liability which can come on the performance. I think that we should evaluate as an ongoing process. That's how it will look at.
You should go by the contract value.
Correct.
And also the penal provision and possibility of the legalities.
Correct. I see, and also in contingent liability, unless the claim has been made or the order has been there, I think you have to go by the accounting standard. I will say technical reading of those to make it's a contingent liability also. Just because COVID has come, we can't say everything and read the agreement and say everything is a claims. It's going to come. This probability of the claim is there until it is lodged by the customer or by the vendor for liquidated damages or something. Unless it has been lodged and you're aware of it, you have to go by the general practice. You can't assume and say that this is going to be there. I'm going to make some provisions on it, or I'm going to make a disclosure on it. Unless actually it has been proven that there is a claim made or an order been issued, or there is a particular facts which you believe as an auditor or as a company you believe it is going to affect the company's performance in future, then you take it into the disclosure or into the books. You have to continue in the general practice. I think you can't move away from what is general accounting practice. I'm saying the gap will always be common sense, as others said. You have to be very common sense to the approach. At the same time, you have to evaluate the situation. I'm saying if there could be, see, suddenly your capacity of production comes to 1/3 because of the usage of people, then it doesn't mean that you cannot produce, correct? Because the restriction is that to use 1/3 people does not produce. The company can produce 100. You are allowed 1/3 of to be produced. What is the company? So it all becomes a cycle. I'm saying cycle of, you have to take a very, very professional judgment there.
Mr. Ramprasad, one question is that there were a lot of notification which had come under the disaster management, and there are few companies who have adhered to. Most of the companies have been trying to somehow violated how does this audit process look into it? Will that report on that, or do you expect the management to give a representation on adherence? How does it go?
I think it's a good question. It's to my mind clearly a non-existing event, as I see it. Definitely, nobody would have anticipated it on the date of the balance sheet. Having said that, it has to be a combination of representations. I would definitely discuss this independently with the board also, and to see what sort of reporting mechanism they have. Things like how many people attended. Government measure today tells you that you need to take a temperature reading. You need to maintain certain level of hygiene and sanitization in the factory. How are those things being taken care? I would put it a presentation and independent discussion board, and also every company has appointed a nodal officer to address this issue. Keep discussing with him, and also see for any news which is available in public knowledge and domain, because anything like this happens in a company, it is immediately flashed in the news, and look for those things, combine all those things, and then probably take a judgment, a professional view on that. Yeah.
I think I would like to add on this. I think when this first MHA order came in, when they said that all the companies can start, but if they violate the law, the establishment will be closed. But today, after a week, they have said if there is an employee which has been affected or a thing is affected, you can take that employee out, disinfect. Within 48 hours, you can resume. So it is a progressive in nature. I think we should evaluate the process of the event based on the circumstances, not to think that eventually the business will close down. Hope I am right. I think Ram Prasad, if you have any views, you can.
No, absolutely. I think you are very right, Mr. Ganesh. One can't take a very I fully agree with you. And as others rightly said, probably a deeper engagement with the management, a deeper understanding of the business, a complete appreciation of what the management is doing to put through the survival process would probably be helpful for audit community and auditors to ensure that they take a very sound view.
Thank you, panelists. I think we had a fair discussion of all the intricacies about the forthcoming audit. If any members have to raise any questions, the floor is open. Any quick questions, we can take up to 2 to 3 questions, or you can put it in the chat box. Any questions from the audience? Prithvi, can we, I think there is no questions. I think whatever questions have come on the chat box also have been addressed to, and the panel is open. Can we move ahead? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Okay, then I would request Mr. Ganesh to present the vote of thanks.
Yeah, I'd like to thank all the participants and the people who are in the session, Ram Prasad, Adarsh and Vinay, and also thanks Om for your wonderful questions on moderating this session. And I would like to thank BCIC members Prithvi and Rupa Sham Prasad, who are taking up this to coordinate for this web session, and also all the participants who can take in their Saturday evening time for taking part in this session of COVID-19. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. So we will adjourn the meeting now. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.